The smile was a masterpiece. Goldie Hawn's signature beam, wide, golden, and full of mischief, had lit up cinema screens for decades. It danced through the chaos of the 60s, glowed through the cynicism of the 70s, and charmed even the most jaded critics deep into the glossy, high-powered studios of the 80s. She was, in every sense, the sunshine of Hollywood. But sunshine casts shadows. And for the first time in nearly 6 decades, those shadows stepped forward. At a quiet, velvet-draped gala in Malibu, meant to be a retrospective celebration of her illustrious career, Goldie stood under the warm glow of chandeliers, her voice slightly raspy, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. Eyes glimmered all around her, waiting for a laugh, a memory, a cheeky anecdote. Instead, what came was silence. Then, words carefully measured, ice-cold, deliberate. There were some co-stars I worked with, and I hated them. Hated. Not just professionally. Not just the, oh, we don't click kind of thing. I mean a real, bone-deep disgust. A gasp, then her eyes narrowed. Let's start with Robert Stanton. A murmur swept through the ballroom like a rogue wind. Brooding, arrogant, smelled like cigarettes and self-pity. Thought the sun rose just to light his close-up. She tilted her head, her smile curling, not kindly. Then there was Cliff Chandler. Golden boy, a smile like a toothpaste ad. But let me tell you, behind that grin was nothing. No warmth, no generosity. Just calculation. He'd memorize your lines just to throw you off. She sipped her drink. The room had fallen dead silent now. And Derek DeWitt? God, where do I even start? The man rehearsed mirror monologues between takes. He once said, "Goldie, try not to sparkle so much. You're blinding my moment." Can you imagine? A single laugh tried to break the silence. It failed. I kept quiet all these years because, well, I thought it didn't matter. But maybe it does. Maybe it's time we start telling the truth about what we endured to keep the smiles alive. And just like that, she turned away from the mic, leaving behind a room frozen in time, full of Hollywood's elite blinking in disbelief. For a woman who had made a career on sweetness and joy, Goldie Hawn had just shattered the myth of harmony in Tinseltown with a champagne-laced dagger. But this wasn't the beginning of the end. This was the start of a story no one saw coming. Early tensions. The start of a hidden rift. Long before the champagne glass trembled in her fingers, long before the cameras turned to catch her every word at that Malibu gala, the seeds of resentment had already taken root. Quietly, bitterly, on sets drenched in light and shadow. It was 1969, the year Cactus Flower bloomed and made her a star. Goldie Hawn was just 24. Her voice feather-light, her laugh easy and unguarded. But her sudden rise sparked more than admiration. It ignited something colder in the hearts of men who had long assumed the spotlight was theirs by birthright. The first one was Robert Stanton. They were cast together in a now-forgotten noir pastiche, a studio film trying to rebrand Robert's aging mystique. Goldie was brought in last minute to brighten the screen. Or, as Stanton put it to a crew member within earshot, to add some sugar to my scotch. From day one, the energy was off. Robert never looked her in the eyes during rehearsals. When the director called "cut," he wouldn't even nod. One afternoon, between takes, Goldie tried to bridge the gap. "You've got a killer presence," she told him, offering a rare compliment. He stared at her, unimpressed. "And you've got a killer giggle. Hope it lasts longer than your close-up." She laughed it off, but it stung. That was Robert. Brilliant, brittle, and utterly allergic to sharing the frame. By the end of the shoot, she'd stopped speaking to him, and in her dressing room, she scribbled in her journal, "His silence was louder than the script. And I'm tired of being talked around." Then came Cliff Chandler. He was Hollywood's blonde favorite, grinning in every tabloid, arm around some ingenue, always rumored to be engaged. By the time they were paired in a romantic drama set in Tuscany, Goldie was already an Academy Award winner. But Cliff treated her like a distraction. On set, he was charming. Too charming. He'd whisper compliments just loud enough for the crew to hear. Goldie's doing great for someone who made her name giggling on a couch. Or worse, he'd tweak her blocking during takes. One time, he walked into her light on purpose, just enough to cast a shadow across her cheek. When she confronted him later, he shrugged. It's not personal. It's just instinct. She didn't cry. Not in front of him. But the director later found her backstage, silent, looking into a mirror with no expression at all. She had learned that Cliff's smile had more venom than venom itself. And then came Derek DeWitt. By the time they co-starred, Goldie was producing her own projects. She'd fought tooth and nail for creative control, only to find herself battling Derek's daily performances, off camera. He'd arrive on set in designer sunglasses, 2 hours late, reeking of lavender and aftershave. He spoke only to directors and publicists, never crew, never her. Once, she asked for a line read. He waved his hand and said, "Sweetheart, I don't repeat myself. That's for reruns." He'd rewrite scenes mid-shoot, adding monologues for himself. He claimed the audience needed emotional meat. Translation: more Derek, less Goldie. She finally lost it during a night shoot. "You think this is your movie?" she snapped. "Darling," he smirked, "every movie I'm in is mine." The silence after that could have cracked marble. Behind the laughter, the twirls, the endless interviews where she smiled and said, "Oh, we had so much fun." There was rot. Quiet, polished, and camera-ready rot. And she carried it for years, until that one night when she let it all out. Building tensions, from quips to cold spats. They say Hollywood is a town built on illusion. Goldie Hawn knew this better than anyone. She was the illusion, the delightful ditz, the bubbly blonde, the woman who could diffuse any room with a single toss of her hair and that musical laugh. But beneath the sequins and spotlight, resentment simmered like a slow boil in a porcelain teacup, cracking from the inside. With Robert Stanton, it escalated in the most subtle, cutting ways. He refused to run lines with her, claimed it disrupted his rhythm. She caught him slipping pages of the script to a female co-star, her scenes, asking her to try them out, see if they felt more authentic. One afternoon, they were blocking a tense scene where their characters were meant to argue on a rain-soaked balcony. The director wanted rawness, emotion, but Robert, he improvised a line mid-scene. "You don't belong here," he snarled, face inches from hers. "You were just cast for the laugh track." Gasps on set. Cameras still rolling. Goldie's face didn't flinch. She delivered her next line perfectly. Paused. Then turned to the director and said coolly, "Are we done letting actors write their own screenplays now?" The crew went silent. With Cliff Chandler, the war was psychological. Always the gentleman on press tours, always the flirt on red carpets, but behind closed doors, he chipped at her confidence like a sculptor hacking marble. He'd accidentally call her by the wrong character name. Often. Once, in front of the entire crew, he chuckled, "Is it Daisy? Dolly? God, there've been so many." When she corrected him, his reply was dripping in charm. "Oh, sweetheart, I only remember names that matter." She never told the press. Not once. But her costume designer noticed she started requesting higher collars, longer sleeves, more structured fabrics. She was shielding herself, armoring up piece by piece. And then there was Derek DeWitt, the peacock in a theater of pigeons. He and Goldie were supposed to be co-leads in a political satire. But he twisted every scene into a monologue. During one rehearsal, he turned to the director and said, "I think I should have a breakdown here. Maybe sob. Rip my shirt." Goldie blinked. It's my character's mother who just died, Derek. He smiled. Yes, and I'm reacting to your reaction. That's where the audience connects. It was madness, narcissistic theater. But the producers didn't care. Derek sold tickets. So Goldie did what Goldie always did. She shined through it. On screen, the chemistry looked electric. Off-screen, they had separate trailers, separate call times, and a no-contact clause by the third week of filming. One script supervisor joked, "It's like filming a love story between two icebergs." By now, the pattern was clear. The more she rose, the more some men tried to drag her back down, not with fists or insults, but with sabotage wrapped in silver. They interrupted her scenes, dimmed her light, questioned her talent in the subtlest, cruelest ways possible. And every time she smiled through it. Until the night in Malibu, when she finally stopped pretending. The reveal. The ballroom at the Malibu Grove Resort was drenched in gold. It was supposed to be a quiet night, a celebration of legacy, not controversy. The industry's most radiant starlet turned storied veteran, honored for a career spanning 5 decades. Friends, former co-stars, studio heads, and a parade of designer gowns floated between crystal chandeliers and bottomless flutes of vintage Veuve Clicquot. A string quartet played something soft and forgettable. Cameras flashed occasionally but respectfully. The tone was reverent. And then she took the stage. Goldie Hawn, 79 years old, dressed in a shimmering ivory column gown, her hair pulled into a regal updo. Every eye in the room turned toward her as she approached the mic. She smiled. Not the trademark Goldie smile. No, this one was quieter, thinner, the kind of smile that held back more than it let through. "I was told to speak from the heart tonight," she began, her voice clear, even. "To reflect on the beautiful journey I've had and to say thank you." Polite applause, glasses clinked. "But I want to do something else." A hush fell over the room. She adjusted the microphone slightly, then leaned in. "There's something we don't talk about in this town, something we've all swallowed for decades. And maybe I'm old enough now to say it without worrying whose feelings I'll hurt." She paused. Her hand trembled. Barely. There were people I worked with who made it miserable, who turned the joy of filmmaking into a battlefield, and I think it's time I named them. No one moved. Her smile returned, but it was daggered. "Robert Stanton." Gasps. Robert was a master of mood. He could silence a set with a glance, and he used it. To belittle, to undermine. He once told me I was only hired because audiences needed a break from thinking. I smiled. Then I buried that comment so deep it took 40 years to dig it up. Murmurs. Cliff Chandler. A hand flew to a mouth in the second row. Mr. America. He called me Cupcake for 3 straight weeks. Refused to learn my name until we were in the final scene. Said it helped him stay detached. You know what helped me stay detached? A sense of dignity he didn't have. Laughter rippled. Nervous, unsure. And of course, Derek DeWitt. This one landed like a thunderclap. He made every film a one-man show, even if there were 30 of us in a scene. I once caught him rehearsing his own acceptance speech. During a funeral scene we were shooting, and when I asked him to please stick to the blocking, he said, "Sweetheart, you play sunshine. I play God." Silence. Somewhere, a camera shutter clicked. I kept these stories to myself because I was taught to. I was taught to be the good girl, the smiling one, the one who floats above the drama. Her voice cracked, just slightly, but I'm not floating anymore. A long pause. I want young actors, especially women, to know that it's okay to call out the wolves dressed in velvet. That just because someone's a legend doesn't mean they're not a tyrant, and that your silence is not the price of your paycheck. The room was silent, stunned, moved, afraid to breathe. Then slowly, one clap, then another, then dozens. A standing ovation. Goldie didn't bow. She didn't bask. She simply stepped away from the mic and returned to her seat where she sipped her champagne like nothing happened at all. But Hollywood would never forget what she said, and the names would echo for weeks. Emotional turning point. The fallout. The applause had barely faded before the tremors began. By dawn, the headlines were live. "Goldie Hawn drops bombshell names in brutal award speech," screamed one. "Hollywood queen slays 3 kings in one night," shrieked another. The footage went viral within hours. The video clip dissected, slowed down, zoomed in, and memed into oblivion. But behind the screen glare and clickbait frenzy, something deeper began to unravel. Quiet, sharp, and personal. Goldie didn't leave the gala early. She stayed for the full program, smiling, nodding, receiving hugs that felt a little too tight or a little too stiff. Some guests whispered congratulations into her ear. Others, nothing at all. Old friends turned their heads. One producer, once eager to toast her at any table, slipped quietly out the back. Back home, the silence was different. Her Malibu house, once a sanctuary, now buzzed with unanswered calls and text messages blinking like distress signals. Publicists, journalists, close sources. Everyone wanted her to clarify, or retract, or apologize. She refused. For the first time in decades, she felt unchained. But freedom has its price. Robert Stanton's rep issued a public statement. Mr. Stanton is shocked and saddened by Ms. Hawn's remarks. He remembers their collaboration fondly and wishes her well. Cliff Chandler didn't release a statement. He posted a throwback photo of the two of them from 1974 with the caption, "Some memories age better than others." And Derek DeWitt, he went live on Instagram from his Provence estate, holding a glass of wine and offering a smirk to the camera. Darling Goldie, always the scene stealer, even when the cameras aren't rolling. I applaud her. Creative reinterpretation of history. He winked. The comment section lit up in real time. But for Goldie, the noise wasn't what shook her. What shook her were the emails she started getting. Quiet, private, anonymous at first, then signed, from young actresses, from makeup artists, from costume designers, from extras. Thank you for saying what we never could. He did the same thing to me. You've just told our story. The pain she'd carried alone for decades was suddenly not hers alone. It had always been communal, hidden in glances, in silences, in polite smiles. She sat at her desk, the same one she used to memorize scripts as a 20-something fresh-off laugh-in, and stared at the messages. Her fingers hovered above the keys, but she didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, she whispered, half to herself, half to the ghosts that lived in those stories. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was just quiet. And now the quiet was broken. Her inner circle worried. A close friend called and begged her to do an exclusive, to shape the narrative before others did. A longtime publicist suggested she walk it back just slightly, darling. Maybe say it was taken out of context. Goldie listened, paused, then said, "Let them talk. They talked for 50 years. I've earned my 5 minutes." But behind that steel, the exhaustion was real. She wasn't bitter. She was bleeding. The wounds were old, but the air felt fresh against them. There was no joy in the backlash, no comfort in the spectacle. Only a strange, aching relief. She looked out at the Pacific, its waves crashing under the morning sun, and thought, maybe I didn't start a fire. Maybe I just stopped pretending it wasn't already burning. Climax, the unravel at the reunion. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The studio had planned the reunion long before Goldie's explosive speech, a glossy 50th anniversary special celebrating the film that first paired her with Cliff Chandler, the very role that turned them into America's sweethearts. A film still quoted, still screened, still immortalized in Sunday afternoon marathons. The timing? Awful. The tension? Palpable. But the cameras? Already booked. The event was held at a grand soundstage on the Paramount lot, reimagined with vintage props, velvet armchairs, and nostalgic lighting that softened wrinkles and memories alike. The invitation-only guest list read like a film lover's fever dream: former co-stars, retired directors, archivists, and a handful of legacy reporters. Goldie arrived last. She always had. When she stepped into the room, a hush fell, like the moment just before a stage curtain lifts. She wore black this time, simple, sharp. Her smile, now calculated. Robert Stanton was already seated, glasses on, posture perfect, legs crossed like he'd just stepped out of a 1973 GQ ad. He didn't rise when she entered, didn't blink. Cliff Chandler was chatting near the refreshments table, laughing with two young assistants who clearly didn't know the history. When he saw her, his jaw tightened, just slightly. Then the charm returned like a mask slipping back into place, and Derek DeWitt, well, he arrived late, as expected. In a suede jacket and silk scarf, sunglasses perched defiantly indoors. He didn't acknowledge her, not even a nod. The host began with light banter. Questions about the good old days. Goldie kept her answers brief, polished. Then, at minute 32, the question came. So much of the film's magic was the on-screen chemistry. Looking back, what was it really like working together? Silence. Cliff leaned forward, ready to deliver a trademark quote, something cheeky, deflective. But Goldie beat him to it. It was a performance, she said, her voice crisp. Every bit of it, every glance, every laugh, especially between takes. A pause. The host blinked. Care to elaborate? She turned directly to Robert. You wouldn't even look at me during rehearsals. You said my acting was decorative. Robert smiled tight. You had a talent for stealing scenes. That's not a flaw. It's survival, she shot back. The air thickened. She turned to Cliff. You erased me in interviews, refused to say my name. Do you remember that? Page 6, 1975? That blonde girl? I had just won an Oscar. Cliff opened his mouth, closed it. Then Derek chuckled. Are we really dragging ancient history into the spotlight for applause? Her eyes met his, fierce, unwavering. No, Derek. I'm dragging it into the light because I'm done living under yours. The silence that followed was exquisite. No camera dared cut away. No producer dared interfere. It wasn't scandal anymore. It was a reckoning. The host scrambled to pivot. Well, let's shift gears. How about some favorite memories? Goldie didn't flinch. She sat back, crossed her legs, and smiled. My favorite memory? Walking off that set and knowing I'd never let anyone treat me that way again. The shoot wrapped quietly. No hugs, no toasts, just tension and takeaways. Backstage, Cliff approached her. He looked smaller somehow, older, less polished. You really meant it all, didn't you? She looked at him for a long moment. I meant every word I didn't say back then. That's the part that stung the most. She walked away. Robert left through a side door. Derek vanished before anyone could catch him. And Goldie. She stepped outside into the California dusk, the air warm, the lot quiet. For the first time in years, she felt finished. Not broken, not bitter, finished. Reflective epilogue. Did she mean it? The dust had settled, but the echoes remained. Weeks passed. The headlines faded, replaced by newer scandals and fresher faces. The reunion special aired with subtle edits. The raw tension smoothed over in post-production like fingerprints wiped from glass. But those who were there knew, and those who watched closely could feel it, beneath the soft music and filtered lighting, a tremor of truth that couldn't be color-corrected. Goldie Hawn didn't give follow-up interviews. She didn't capitalize on the moment, didn't write a memoir, didn't tour talk shows milking the drama for applause. She simply returned to her life. Quieter now. Still smiling, but less for the camera, more for herself. Her home in Malibu became her sanctuary again. No paparazzi, no set calls, just early morning coffee on the deck, barefoot walks through the garden, phone calls from her children. Peace after decades of applause. But one question lingered. In the industry, in whispers, in fan circles online. Did she mean it? Every word, every name. Was it hate? Was it bitterness? Or was it something more complicated, older, deeper, sadder? The truth is, Goldie never hated them the way people think of hate. She didn't fantasize about revenge, didn't keep score, didn't twist in rage over long-gone slights. What she carried wasn't malice, it was memory. Memory left to rot too long in silence, buried beneath decades of smiling through gritted teeth, of being easy, of letting it slide. She had loved the work. She had loved the craft. But she had spent years loving it through clenched jaws, forced laughter, and the quiet humiliation of being underestimated, dismissed, managed. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't an explosion. It was a release, a letting go. She never said their names again. Not once, not in public, not in private. That night on the stage in Malibu was the burial and the eulogy. Years later, a young actress approached her at a charity gala, nervous and wide-eyed. "I just want to say, thank you, for being the first one to say what we were all too scared to." Goldie smiled gently, took her hand, and whispered, "Don't wait 50 years." That was her legacy. Not just the laughter, or the glamour, or the unforgettable roles, but the quiet courage it took to tell the truth, to break the illusion, to say the unsayable. She had always been the sunshine. But now, finally, she'd allowed herself the storm. And in that storm she found clarity. Not everyone believed her, not everyone forgave her. But for the first time in her long, luminous career, Goldie Hawn belonged entirely to herself. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.